Today we have Hanna Hamid here in our podcast. She is the head of Sigma Software Canada, and she also participates in a lot of community initiatives and serves as a board member for a non-profit organization. She's very excited and enthusiastic about promoting diversity, equity, inclusion as well. And a lot of this has to do also with your experiences and with who you are. So I'm super excited to have you on the podcast, Hanna. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ibna. It's truly a pleasure to take part of this exciting podcast and be able to freely speak my mind, something we don't usually get to do a lot.
Yes. And I know you really like to speak your mind, so this is the right place in the
definitely
showcase
yes.
You're speaking your mind. What were some of the important conversations, but perhaps a little bit difficult at the time to have, that ended up leading to a significant breakthrough, a significant outcome for you or for someone else in your career or work related?
All right. So through my career, I've had a lot of difficult conversations that either I had to give or I had to receive. And one of them, I would say, was during a panel I had to participate in a while back. And the panel was about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I was invited to take part of the panel. I had other colleagues with me. And at some point, one of the colleagues sitting on the panel made a comment that did not sit well with me. You might not know this, but I am from a Middle Eastern background, I subscribe to the Middle Eastern culture, but I am from North Africa and from Sudan originally. And we have the same culture somehow as the Middle Eastern culture because we're a Muslim Arab country. And I have had the chance to work with a lot of Middle Eastern people. I have actually lived in Muscat in Oman. I have lived in the UAE for a while. So I'm very accustomed to that culture. And it's a culture that I hold dear. So one of my colleagues mentioned that in the Middle East, women can't do business, cannot deal with men, cannot have a position of importance, if I can put it this way. To be honest with you, I remember vaguely what he said, but I remember that it was something around this. And I wanted to answer. And I am someone who is actually, as you said, as I love to speak my mind, but sometimes when I get too emotional, the way I speak can come out, I would sound angry, even if I'm not. Like my passionate nature, sometimes the way I convey it comes out as anger. But I definitely knew that I had to respond because it's not true. I felt that this person had some kind of bias towards this culture, which is not true to a certain extent. Especially me having lived there and worked there and had clients there and built team there, I know that this is not true. Women do have their place. So I tried to find a way to compose myself, keep my calm, and respond like in front of everyone in the panel. And I just told my colleague that you actually have an unconscious bias and this is not true. And I explained to that person that, yes, I can do business in the Middle East, that yes, I have conducted successful business in the Middle East. I've had big clients in the Middle East. And the only thing that I had to do differently is the way I address them, because each culture, we have different ways of doing business. We have different ways of viewing the world. And I believe you need to respect. If you decide to do business in a culture, if you decide to go and move in a certain place, you need to respect this culture. You have to be mindful of not hurting people's beliefs, people's feelings, and so on and so forth. So I would say this is like one of the hardest conversations I've had in the past year, let's say, put it this way.
Yeah, and I think that's a situation that happens quite a lot, this whole bias statements. Sometimes we don't hear it. It's happening. We don't hear it. Sometimes it happens to our face. And you were in a delicate situation because you weren't expecting it. You were in front of a lot of people. And it seems like you were feeling quite angry and frustrated with that in the moment, because you knew that wasn't the case. And it was probably projecting the wrong idea to the audience. If you didn't address it to some extent or in some way, did you ever think about that? What the audience would think?
Even actually, you're raising a very good point. My last name is Hamid. It's obvious that I am Muslim. It's obvious that I am from some kind of Arab or North African background. So I felt that I had the duty to defend this culture, because if I stay silent, it means I agree with what that person said. And I didn't think it would be fair to me or to people from my culture, from my background, because I do agree in some cases it is hard for women to break through in certain industries in this area, but it is also the case in different cities, in different countries around the world, for women to break through certain fields or industries. So I felt that I had the obligation to defend all this the Middle Eastern people, the Middle Eastern culture, because it is not 100% true what that person have said. So I felt like it's my duty, let's say.
Yeah, like it's your duty. And do you think that was what made you speak up, or was it the anger, or was it a combination of all of that? What really triggered you in the moment to think, you know what, I have to say something right now?
I would say it was first and foremost, like the first emotion I remember feeling was like, what is that person saying? That does not make sense. And then as the person continued explaining, my kind of sense of disbelief started to turn towards anger. And it's not, I don't even want to say anger. It's like I just got very emotional. I felt attacked. And although I'm pretty sure this person did not mean to attack me, I don't even think that person like realized that saying such things could affect people in a bad way. And I think, to be very candid with you, I have experienced this kind of comments all my life. I grew up in Canada, and Canada is a very open culture. People are very welcoming. In Montreal, where I'm from, when you walk on the street, you hear different languages. You could hear Mandarin, you could hear Hebrew, Arabic, Spanish, Italian. We're very multicultural, and we really embrace this. But I have experienced also the unpleasant comments about me being Muslim, people telling me, how come you're not wearing the veil? Did your father not force you? Like asking questions. And sometimes I feel that it's because people lack education. They don't really understand the culture. They see what the media is portraying, and they take it for a fact that this is how people from certain areas in the world come from. It was all these feelings that I was feeling the moment. It was like this belief that we're in a panel talking about diversity, and this person making a comment like this. It was me feeling very emotional, because sometimes, you get triggered. Someone says something and it takes you back to a place, where you were that you didn't want to be. And what I mean by that, I have not always been outspoken, especially when it comes to issues like this, because I always felt that, okay, I have to keep silent. I have to stay under the radar. I don't want to come as an angry woman, because most of the time when women start asserting themselves, we are labeled as aggressive, as bossy, but we're just being assertive, explaining our feelings and so on and so forth. So at that moment, I felt empowered, and I felt it was my duty to go ahead and talk and speak my mind. And I just spoke unapologetically as I felt I needed to.
No, that's beautiful that you actually spoke up, and you were representing yourself. You were representing the Arab culture, which is a beautiful culture. I've experienced it for 7 years. You're representing the woman in the audience. You're representing the values of diversity, equity, inclusion in that moment. And how did the man respond to that?
You mean the person who made this comment? Nothing, actually. When I said what I had to say, then I said it very politely. I was very mindful. And at that moment, actually, I remember something that my mom always says to me. She says, kill people with kindness, because when you're kind to them, if they decide to counterattack, if they decide to reply back, they're going to do it in a gentle manner that will match the way that you're talking to them. And that person, after I shared like my opinion, they did not reply anymore. So it's either I help make them realize that what they're saying isn't true and could even be hurtful, or they just had nothing to say. I'm not sure why they did not reply, but I would have loved to dive deeper in the conversation and try to understand why were they thinking about this. But then again, we all have unconscious biases, so I cannot hold this against the person, because I have my own unconscious biases that I'm trying to work on, and we all do, and it's part of being human, and it's part of the experience.
Yeah, it certainly is. I'm curious how you felt after actually saying that in responding in the moment.
It's funny, because after I was done, I went and I spoke to someone in the crowd that I'm close to, and I told them I actually felt bad, because I did not want to offend that person. I did not want to make them look not cultured enough. So I honestly felt bad after. For a while, like for half an hour, I was dwelling like maybe I should have not, maybe why did I speak? Maybe I should have just kept silent. So there was like this internal battle between me being, okay, good job, Hannah. Be proud of yourself. You spoke up your mind. You said what you know is to be your truth. But at the same time, there is all this emotions about me feeling guilty because perhaps I have offended my colleague on the panel. Maybe I have made them feel bad about themselves and so on and so forth. So it was a mix. I had mixed emotions actually.
I can relate to that a lot. Often speak my mind sometimes and feel that it's a mix of emotions and you don't quite know which one is the real emotion. But now that you look back at it from the future to the past, what do you think? Do you think that it was worth it? Do you feel like you feel good about it right now? Would you have done anything differently if a situation like that emerged today?
You know what? If not, I would do it again because I feel it's very important to find your voice and to speak your truth. And I feel that many of us are not able to do that because we're always thinking perhaps we're being too empathetic towards other people, we're being too kind to other people, even when people are being kind to us. So I would have done it the same way because I believe I have delivered my message in a very respectful and in a very honest way. And I delivered my message with candor, and my message was well received by the people sitting at that panel that day. And as I said, my colleague on the panel did not reply, did not say anything. I'm not sure why they didn't, but I am happy that I have done that. And although I had mixed emotions, I was feeling guilty, I feel that I have done the right thing and I would do it again.
Yeah, and I think that not only you did the right thing in the moment, but you also were demonstrating to other people in the audience that they can speak up. You're role modeling the way by actually speaking your mind in that situation, in that moment. And so I'm guessing you didn't really have a conversation with this man after.
No, we never spoke again. I was too, to be honest, like maybe it's my fault because I honestly wanted to go and speak to that man afterwards, but how can I put it? I hate confrontations, and I'm pretty sure there would have been no confrontation between us because we're professionals and so on and so forth. But I was feeling too guilty about speaking up because I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, like his feelings, because it's very nerve-wracking being on a panel, having a lot of people staring at you and being asked questions, although like you prepare for it. Sometimes some questions, some comments come, this one that you're not prepared for. So I decided not to go and speak to that person, but that person did not come and speak to me either. So I believe both of us were feeling maybe awkward about the whole situation. But yeah.
Yeah, and it is awkward and a bit strange. And you're right. He probably felt awkward. Maybe that's the reason he didn't say anything, which in a way is positive if he decided to confront you in the moment. That could
Yeah.
have been complicated if he was that kind of guy. But apparently not in the way your tone, you're calm. And like your mother says, kill them with kindness. Just that respectful tone definitely helps a lot in those instances.
I totally agree with you. You don't win a battle, or like you don't win an argument by screaming or yelling at people. You lose. And it's funny, even because I have two sons, and I always tell them when you're facing situations, because sometimes they just scream at each other, they're fighting and they start yelling at each other, and I tell them like the moment you start screaming, you actually lose the battle, because the moment you start screaming, you will allow like all kind of emotions to come out, emotion that maybe do not even have the place in that situation. And I always tell them, use your words, like don't yell, don't scream. There is no point, you will lose. So this is something like my parents taught me, like from a young age, like to express myself, express my feelings respectfully without screaming. And I'm trying to also convey that to my kids. And I think it's very important, especially when you are in an industry where you have to always try to defend yourself, defend your place as a woman in that industry. And you do panels or you go to networking events, and you're going to always hear something that might not sit well with you. I feel that we need to train ourselves to speak our mind, to speak our truth, but to do it in a way that is comforting. So whoever is receiving the message at the other end will receive this message in a peaceful way, if I can say that, because this is going to change the tone of the conversation that will come afterwards.
Yeah, and I agree. It's almost impossible to get buy-in or agreement or influence behavioral change from the other side if they don't feel like you're in a good situation, that they're not being attacked. They don't have to defend themselves. In order to open up, they need to feel like, okay, we're in peace here.
Exactly.
I'm being treated with respect. So now I'm willing to talk and I'm willing to listen.
I totally agree. Yes, you have said it beautifully.
And one of the things that you've mentioned is that you've too experienced imposter syndrome. Could you share maybe one or two instances or situations where it was really strong? Like what was going on in your life that made you experience that imposter syndrome?
I will speak about it, something that happened actually very recently. My company was attending GITEX Africa. It's the biggest tech conference in Africa. And for me, Africa is home. Although I'm from Sudan, but any country I've been in Africa felt like home to me. So I was asked to go with the team attending GITEX Africa, and I decided to apply to submit a call for speakers application. So I did that, and I wanted to speak about how women can break the glass ceiling in tech. And I applied, and I was like, perhaps they're not going to take me because I haven't been in Africa in ages. I have no idea of the African reality currently. I read articles. I'm very invested into knowing what's going on in Africa and so on and so forth. But I haven't lived there since 2000. The last time I actually was living there was in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. So I am far from the reality of women there. Like I just know of it. I haven't experienced it. But anyhow, they actually accepted. They loved my subject. They loved how I wanted to actually talk about it and so on and so forth. So I was very happy. I was excited. And then 1 week before flying to Marrakesh, I remember I was actually putting together my PowerPoint for presentation and everything. And I just started shaking, literally my hands were shaking. I had hard time breathing, and I was like, who am I? Why do I even think that I have the capacity to go speak to these women to encourage them to follow a career in tech? I haven't been living in Africa. I don't know what's going on. I'm a fraud, basically. That's my mind. My mind was going in all directions. I was having a lot of negative self-talk. And I just started crying. So what I did, I called my mom and I told her, Mama, I think I made a mistake for wanting to go to Africa and do this speech. And I just feel like I don't deserve this. Perhaps this is out of luck that they took me. So I was in all this self-doubt. And my mom, she's such a kind person. She has such a lovely, and she told me, Hanoi is my nickname, by the way. She told me, Hanoi, why are you saying this? Look at how many speeches have you done so far? How many conferences did you attend? She told me, even if it's out of luck, if you think it's out of luck. And one thing my mom does, it's when we're stressed, regardless of the situation, she does not try to how can I say that? She will not tell us, no, what you're feeling is not right. She will validate our feeling. And I find this is very important. So she told me, if you really believe this is out of luck, she told me, that's good then. Luck came into your way, and now you're going to go and prove yourself. So if you truly think it's because out of luck, embrace it. You're lucky. Who wouldn't want to be lucky? And after talking to me and calming me down, I started breathing. I was like, you know what? She's right, actually. I have done so many speeches here in Montreal. I have done the round table at a conference in San Francisco. I have done just before GITEX Africa, I've done another talk for Women in Tech Global Conference in New York. So I was like, you know what? My mom is right. I was just being too emotional because I'm going back home. So I was feeling like an imposter. And then I realized, you know what, after talking to my mom, I was like, okay, yes, I had a huge episode, a meltdown, because I was feeling like an imposter. So talking to my mother actually made me put everything into perspective and see that, you know what, maybe I'm just freaking out for no reason. So this is something this happened last month. So I'm talking to you and I still remember all the emotions that I was feeling.
Thank you for sharing the vulnerability of the moment, because that's how a lot of us feel sometimes. And finding that person that, in your case, your mother, that you could call up in that moment to give you that perspective, give you that clarity, give you a different view of things, and just shift. It seems like just by speaking to her, you're able to calm down and stop trembling, and then be able to focus on your actual presentation and do the amazing work that you already do without having to be excessively worried and anxious about it, or even maybe that feeling of guilt, like you said, oh, maybe I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
Because it's lucky. So it seems like having that person, in your case, your mother, that's very important. Someone that will know how to bring perspective into these moments, and reaching out to that person in that moment.
I totally agree. And even what I find that is very, very sad actually is a lot of women. I mentor women here in Montreal, and a lot of them, and I always tell them, when in moments in doubt, text me or call me. If I cannot answer you at the moment that you call or text me, I will do it later. And always they tell me, but we don't want to disturb you. And it makes me laugh, because this is how I feel. Like sometimes when I went to ask someone for help, I don't want to disturb them. And I'm not sure if it's the way we were brought up to be, or is it just women that do that? And my mentees are from different backgrounds, but it's funny because they all have this in common. We don't want to disturb you, Hanna. And I tell them, like, if I offered it, it's because I'm happy to do it, and I will take the time to do it. So I think it's very important to reach out to people, especially people that you love and trust, and that they're your biggest supporters. I encourage everyone, when in moment of doubt, or you're having a vulnerable moment, and it's beautiful to be vulnerable, you discover yourself greatly. Sometimes I feel like, I'm not sure this is everyone, but I always feel that it's a shame. I'll be shamed if I show my vulnerability, if I open up, that it's not good to be vulnerable. When you open up, the world is going to get you. And it's true. When you start allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you discover yourself. You discover beautiful things about you, and you discover a lot of strength in you. I think it's important, like when in moments in doubt, allow yourself to be vulnerable and go get the help that you need, whether it's from your friend, from your mother, from your significant other, from a colleague, but go out there and get that pep talk, because it will make you feel better about yourself, and it will make life more easy and more enjoyable.
That is so true. And that point that you made, Hanna, I wasn't even seeing it coming, which is, oh, I too feel like I'm bothering people when I ask for anything, or asking for help, or asking for their support. And you noticing that from the people that you mentor, the women that you mentor, I can see how that is a big challenge for us, even to ask for that little extra support when we need it the most, because it can make such a big difference. One thing that I like to do myself, because I also have that, oh, I don't want to bother this person, I don't even want to knock on their door. But then I remind myself that let me give them the choice to decide if I'm bothering them or not. I'm just going to explain what is it that I would like, and give them the opportunity, make it in such a way that they're fully comfortable, and that they can save face. You can save their face if they say no, or if they say, oh, not now. Oh, I don't have time today, maybe a week from now. Make it very easy for them to say that, but give them the opportunity to decide if you're bothering them or not. It's their time management. They're adults. They know what they want to prioritize. And a lot of people take a lot of personal satisfaction. I'm sure you do as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing the mentoring that you do in helping others in these critical moments, because we've all received help. So that's very interesting that you bring that up, because it's a real feeling that holds us back. We avoid taking up space, taking up people's time. We don't feel deserving of people's attention, of their space, of their time, of their consideration. And then we withdraw that opportunity that they could have to support you. And we all like to support people. So that's an interesting perspective. That's very true.
Yeah, I totally agree. We should ask for help more and not be ashamed or afraid of doing so. And as you said, you made a very good point. Whoever we're asking help from, they have the choice to say yes, no, maybe, after. So we're not forcing anyone. It's not, I'm calling you, and if you don't answer me, it's the end of the world. So we have to change our mindset when it comes to asking for help. I think it's important that we know that we should and we must ask for help when we need it.
We must. And it's also wonderful that in the middle of the imposter syndrome, the first time around, you still applied for the conference.
Yeah.
You still went forward.
Yes. And I actually had an amazing and overwhelming support from the people after my speech. And it's so funny because the moment I finished, I called my parents. I'm very close to my parents, as I live 5 minutes away from their house. I'm like, I love my parents. So anyhow, so I called them and I was like, I felt like a rock star because I had women coming to meet me like on the stage as I was coming down, shaking hands, taking pictures with me. And I actually, after that, I had other women who were here from other organizations supporting women in Africa telling me, we would love to have you speak in one of our events, if it's online, if you can come. And I felt that I have made an impact. And it's very funny because after my speech, there was another panel by other women from the US, 2 women from the US. I can't recall the companies they're working for, but they were doing a panel actually on DEI. And for 45 minutes, they were referencing what I was talking about, the stereotypes, about the imposter syndrome, because I raised this point, the imposter syndrome. And I felt very happy and very validated when I said, good job, Hanna. You actually went with it. And you can see firsthand that people appreciated your speech. And it was an amazing feeling.
So you definitely feel good about having moved forward
Yes.
and done your presentation. And I'm sure that by the end of that, you felt a lot more confident in yourself.
Totally. I was very happy and I was like, I can't wait to do it again.
Lovely. And one of the things that you talk a lot about is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the key one there is inclusion. I think it's a very important part of the diversity, equity, inclusion because it's a little bit less straightforward and there's not as much, the measurement is not that easy, and it's not as easy to even understand or define very clearly. So I'd love to understand from you, what makes you feel included and how have you been able to even carve out inclusion for yourself in the workplace?
I really like your question. And I love the fact that you are concentrating on inclusion because I love TED Talks. I love reading books and articles on DI. And I find that the inclusion part is not something people really concentrate on. For me, I'll tell you like what is my definition of inclusion, like my own personal definition. For me, inclusion is when you create an environment where everyone feels that their voice and their opinion matters and that they have agency, they have support to speak their mind, and they feel sometimes you're going to a place and it's very diverse, but you don't feel included because the people in that space, in that environment, do not make the effort to make you feel included. And I don't know if I'm like explaining myself well, like what I'm trying to share right now, but it's nice when companies have diversity, not measures, but yeah, like some companies, they ensure that women are well represented, people from different backgrounds, from different genders, sexuality are all represented. But what are they doing to make them feel included? This I find is very important, and I don't have the answer. Like, how can we make it more? Like, how can we make people feel more included? But what I do, and this it's not really related to work, what I'm doing right now, because I feel my company is doing a great job. Sigma, we actually have gender parity in management. In the management level, we have 50% women, 50% men. We're going global, so we're making a lot of efforts to make sure to learn about other cultures, about that we're doing business. And I think they're doing a great job. So like on the at the work level, I don't feel that I have much to do there. But what I'm trying to do, for instance, we're trying to make the Web3 area in Montreal more inclusive of women. So what I did with actually, it wasn't my initiative. It was an initiative of a woman that I respect and I know a lot. She's a CEO of a marketing company. She decided she's very interested in the Web3 and I have interest in that. So she said, you know what, why don't we join forces and create an organization to help women ally in the Web3? So we can make it a more inclusive place. And what we're trying to do, and we're putting in place right now, we're trying to build programs to help women continue either their education or get training in the Web3 domain to make it more inclusive because it's very male dominated. We're trying to give them a voice to speak, share their experiences, like either through networking, either through doing roundtables with women who have more experience in that field. So to help them like feel included in this discussion, because sometimes I find companies or organizations, they do things, they put trying to find the word, I'm sorry, they put mechanism in place, but they did not ask the people concerned, will that work for you? How does that make you feel? So inclusion is very important. And as I said, unfortunately, I do not have a straight answer or a tool that people could go with and work with and say, okay, this is what we have to implement to feel included. But this is something I believe people should really look into, because yes, it's good that you say we're for diversity, we're for equity, but are you including these people? And it's very important, specifically when you're putting in place a mechanism to help a certain strata of people, make sure that you actually include them in the conversation, that they have a seat at the table in order for them to tell you how they feel. And I always say, if you don't have a seat at the table, just bring your own chair. Bring your chair and speak your mind, because if you don't speak your mind, no one is going to listen to you. And then whatever is going to be put in place, and sometimes companies or organizations, they have the best intention, but because you did not voice your concern, you did not speak your truth, you were not, whatever you're feeling is not taken into consideration. And this is why you're not feeling included. And it's a two-way street. Companies have to ensure that there is inclusion, but individuals also have to speak their mind to make sure that they are included. So this is my opinion on inclusion.
Oh my gosh, I love that in so many levels, Hannah. I love your definition of inclusion, because it's about, you said, making sure that people's voices, people feel heard, that they can speak their minds and feel heard. And I love what you said about making sure that the people who we're trying to help feel included are part of the conversation, and that we're tackling the right things and the right problems. And I also love the third part that you just said, which is ideally we want those two areas to happen. We want the organization, the teams, and the leaders to support inclusion and make the environment conducive for people to feel comfortable and open to speak their minds and share their thoughts and their own selves, whatever that looks like to them, but also empower people to be able to find their own level of comfort to share and express their ideas. And I'd love to know from you, what have you personally experienced in the past that made you feel excluded, and what's made you feel included in a specific situation? And if there's anything that you did to make yourself feel included. Now, I'm going to give you a quick example of something that, as you were speaking, I remembered, which is when I lived in the UAE. It was a very multicultural kind of group. And there's so many different people from different nationalities from all over the world working in the company that I worked at. And at lunchtime, that became very clear. You had the table with the North Africans, you had the table with the Emiratis, you had the table with the Indians, you had the table of the Pakistanis, the Brits, the Americans, the French, and it was all separate. I'm a Brazilian originally. So there was no table for Brazil. There was no other Brazilian there. So I had to find my way in. And that's like a very physical representation of inclusion, because I have lunch with, I don't actually feel welcome in any of those tables. The French people are speaking in French. The others are speaking Urdu. I don't even know who do I sit with. And I started to develop my own little technique to infiltrate. And in a few months, I'd say even 6 months, I was able to sit down with any of these groups of people and feel included. And I would sit there, the French would stop speaking French, would start speaking English so that I could understand and participate in the conversation. The Indians would start explaining to me in detail their curries and all their food, and the other ones on the table knew about it. The Brits had those really funny jokes that I couldn't understand at all. I'd ask them to explain these jokes because I just could not figure it out. And it really changed the way I felt in the company, in the environment. And I had all these friends suddenly from all these, and so many different places and tables I could sit at lunchtime. So it became a wonderful moment for me, rather than this, oh my gosh, I feel I don't belong anywhere here.
Yeah, it reminds me of high school, kind of what you're explaining. And it's true, even as adults, we're always like put in a situation that reminds me like the dreadful cafeteria when you have to walk in either a primary school or high school, and you're either a new student or you're a student that don't feel that you belong. It's very funny that you're mentioning that, because as you were saying this, it took me back to my childhood. I'm originally from Sudan, as I mentioned, but I don't actually look Sudanese. I look like some of the Sudanese minority, because Sudan is as it's in Africa, and the majority of people have much darker skin than I do. And this is due to the fact that I'm a mixed child. I have German, I have Turkish, I have Egyptian blood. And it's actually like my mom, who's quarter Sudanese, like half Sudanese, but I was born in Sudan. I was raised in Sudan for a while, so Sudan is very dear to my heart. But growing up, I used to go to a private school, and it was just me, my sister, and two of my cousins that attended that school like when I was attending it, who looked like me, because also my cousin, they're mixed as well. And I remember people were very mean to us, calling us chickpeas and making songs to us about it. So I never felt that I belonged. My friends were my cousin Samar, Iman, and my elder sister Aisha. And people would bully us and say mean stuff to us and pull my hair. And I was terrified. I hated lunch. And because at lunchtime, if I can't see my elder sister, if one of my cousins are absent that day, we're just and I was so tiny growing up. I was like very skinny. I was a tiny person, so I was like an easy target. My cousin Samar, she's big. She's a big girl, so people did not want to mess with her. My sister, I was the easy target. Let's put it this way. And I always felt excluded, and it was very hurtful. And when these girls were being mean to me, I remember always complaining to my dad but I wasn't doing anything about it. I would just go and cry and hide and whatever. And then my dad, one day I came and I complained to him, and he told me, Hanna, he was very serious. Like when he calls me Hanna, that means, although it's my real name, it's like my name, but the moment our parents call us by our names and not our nicknames, it means we are in trouble. So tell me, listen to me. Next time, if you come back here crying because these girls did not include you or mean to you or laughed at you, I am going to give you a good reason to cry for. I was like, okay, that means I will be in trouble. So what I did, I just stood for myself. So the next day when people tried to be mean to me, and I'm trying to remember, because I remember I had a confrontation with this specific girl called Joyce, and I don't remember if I went to fight with her. I started the fight so she respects me, because she was like the cool girl. Everyone followed her. Or she came and I reacted. I don't recall. But one thing I remember after me telling them, listen, you can't do this to me anymore. I'm not going to take it. They became my friends. And when people after that try to bully me or make me feel excluded, they will include me. Just the fact that I spoke. And you know what? Sometimes it all has to do with communication. When you don't communicate your need, when you don't communicate how you're feeling, people don't really know. Yes, kids know, or like adults know that perhaps they're being hurtful, but sometimes by voicing it, by giving it the proper weight that it has, it makes people wake up and realize that their actions are bad. So this is a situation where I felt excluded, and I reacted, I defended myself, and then I was included by this group. But I had a similar experience also in high school, where I was new at that school, and I didn't know anyone. And like you, like they were like the Latinos together, the Palestinians together, the Haitians together, the Asians together, and I felt I don't fit anywhere. So I did like you. I decided to be a social butterfly. So I befriended someone from here, someone from there. And it's funny, but like 20 years later, and like these friends that I made are actually still my best friends until this day. So sometimes you have to bring your own seat to the table and tell people, you know what, I am sitting, you're going to accept me, and here's why. So you really have, it's all about finding one's voice and speaking your truth, because no one else is going to do that for you. And I always tell my kids that I have two sons, and I'm happy they're not going through what I went through as a child, or the bullying, the stuff. They feel included. But I always tell them, when you don't feel included, be intrusive. And sometimes being intrusive is not a bad thing, because if by you coming to a group of people and starting to speak and be kind, be funny, be whatever you want to be, people will get to know you and they will include you. So sometimes in order to be included, you have to be intrusive, I find.
Oh, I love that. I love that advice you give your boys. And your story shows that, because when you chose to speak your mind and show up in those situations, your little enemy became your friend. And
Yeah.
these other people who were ignoring, you didn't fit in, you're excluded, became your best friends as well. So I think what happens is often a lot of people don't try to exclude us. They're just staying in their comfort zone, and we are not their comfort zone. And so they're not trying to exclude us, but because they're scared of getting outside, it's awkward for them sometimes to go away from what's known, from their familiar area. And so we need to be a little bit brave like you were and say, oh, if they're scared and don't have the courage, let me step in and be intrusive and be a little bit vulnerable and communicate openly. And that way they'll be more comfortable with me and we can bond.
Exactly. And we all love our comfort zone, and whatever is strange to us could be scary. If you're not someone who's adventurous, like everything that is different from what you know is scary. But sometimes you just have to be brave and go after it.
Yeah, let's be brave. And thank you so much for sharing a lot of these insightful stories about speaking your mind, where you initially were a little bit scared or hesitated, but at the end, you reaped tremendous awards from speaking your mind and expressing yourself authentically in diverse situations, right? From the panel to as a child with a little bully of some sort, to people that were maybe not as inclusive as you would have hoped for, and how that's transformed you and helped you evolve and grow and bring the best of you to the table as well. So thank you so much for sharing those stories vulnerably today.
My pleasure, Ibna. It was truly a pleasure discussing this with you.